Hey there. What if I told you that you could predict how human beings react the way they do? Imagine how powerful you'd be. Imagine you were buying a car. You had to choose between two cars. In essence, you're only going to buy one. But what motivated you to choose one alternative over the other? What drove you to choose one car over the other hundreds in the lot? Planned behavior dives deeper than a simple prediction. Through history, research, and real-life examples, we can further analyze the importance of planned behavior within the world to explain behaviors. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
I just shipped my bed!
Prior to TPP, Norman Anderson in 1971 formulated the information integration theory, which explored how the mixing of new information with existing thoughts resulted in the changing of a person's attitude. As an extension of information integration theory, in 1980, Isaac Eigen and Martin Fishbein developed the theory of reasoned action. TRA added behavioral intent and how, along with pre-existing attitudes, these intentions can predict responses or behaviors. In 1985, Eigen explored further and developed the theory of planned behavior. TBB has added perceived behavioral control to the TRA model. Jostein Rise, in a 2010 article, The Role of Self-Identity in the Theory of Planned Behavior, a meta-analysis, stated perceived behavioral control refers to the perceived ease or difficulty of performing a behavior. According to the TPB, the more positive a person's attitude, the stronger the subjective norm and the greater the perceived control over the behavior, the more likely it is that a person will intend to perform the behavior. Eigen believed it was necessary to readjust the theory of reasoned action, in turn creating the theory of planned behavior. In Eigen's 1991 article, The Theory of Planned Behavior, he says, general attitudes have assessed with respect to organizations and institutes such as the church, public housing, student government, one's job or employers, minority groups, and particular individuals with whom a person might interact. The failure of such general attitudes to predict specific behaviors directed at the target of the audience has produced calls for abandoning the attitude concept. Eigen is a social psychologist interested in research that deals with attitudes and the relationships between attitudes and behavior.
So when should you apply this theory to your daily life? According to Record 2017, TBB is most commonly used when you want to know why someone does what they do or act the way they act. According to Kennelate 2013, TBB is one of the most widely researched models examining attitudes and behaviors. TBB is used in many fields, such as public relations, business, and health communication. From the article The Development of Planned Behavior, it says, the theory of planned behavior is based around understanding and predicting human behaviors, which allows for such a wide range of uses. Within the healthcare field, it can be used to study disease prevention, pharmacology companies, birth control, and even family planning. For example, one study, Record 2017, looked at whether or not tobacco-free compliance policies impacted smoking behaviors in college students. Another, Asair 2015, looked at behavior surrounding condom use. While this theory can be helpful in predicting certain behaviors, there are also limitations that you should take into account. For one, according to Brand 2009, TBB does not address a time frame between intent and action, meaning we know that someone will act, but we don't know when exactly the action will take place. Additionally, while we've talked about normative influences, TBB doesn't address other decision-making factors like environment, economic standing, and more. Now that we know other researchers and PR professionals use TBB, let's look at an example of how we can use the theory. Say you're a pet shop owner trying to figure out how your customers choose to buy a dog. First, you have to look at their attitudes towards the act or behavior. What does this fictional customer feel about owning a dog? Do they believe owning a dog will have a positive or negative contribution towards their life? This step can also look at the breed of dog. Does it make more sense for the customer to have a big dog or a small dog? You are calculating how a dog will affect the potential customer's life. Next, you have to look up subjective norm. In this case, subjective norm is how your customer thinks the people that surround them socially will react to the purchase of a dog.
I think you should always adopt. There's so many dogs out there in need.
They better not bring a dog that's gonna shed into our apartment.
What? Dogs are so cute. Every time I see a dog on Tinder, I swipe right.
In this way, subjective norm is everything socially surrounding the customer that could influence his or her decision. Lastly, we must look at perceived behavioral control. This looks at how difficult or simple it will be to perform an act or behavior. How much will this pet cost? And how much will the customer deem it wise to spend? Will the dog bark or chew things up? Will he or she have enough time to walk the dog every day? Are they living in apartments with pet rent or large pet deposits?
$100 pet fee? Yeah, right.
Now that we've looked at our fictional customers' attitudes, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control, we have to calculate whether or not each factor is high enough to transform thought into behavioral intention. TPB says the customer will likely buy that dog.
We'll be right back after this commercial break.
When nature calls in the middle of the night, that bathroom light is blinding bright.
What makes up the TPB model? Law in 2006 explains that the theory of planned behavior model suggests that the intention is directly driven by three major constructs: attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavior control. Brand, in 2009, defines attitude as a person's overall evaluation of how he or she feels it would be to perform a behavior. Subjective norm is how you think your friends, family, and other social influences will react to your performance of a behavior. For example, one study by Brand in 2019, interested in condom use for college students, found that a significant other's opinion about condom use significantly impacted whether or not a college student will use condoms during sex. Lastly, perceived behavior control is people's perceptions of their ability to perform a given behavior. Ultimately, the stronger the intention, the more likely an individual will perform the behavior. According to Martin, 2010, it's an improvement to the TRA, reinforces the assumptions in the suggested TRA, and adds some modifications of its own that allows for greater accuracy and reliability in understanding one's attitude and predicting his deliberate, planned, and resulting actual behavior. The TPB maintains what the TRA suggested about human behavior being governed by one's attitude and behavioral intentions categorized by the presence of social norms and the exercise of volitional control. According to Martin, 2019, the first assumption is that the intentions of the individual largely reflects his personal attitudes or the perception on the extent of the favorability of an act. This is in recognition of man being, by nature, a social creature, so that he will no doubt care about what others think or believe. More often than not, if society demonstrates general favorability toward an act, it is likely that the individual will think the same. Lastly, is that the intentions and the resulting behaviors of the individual are affected by their perceived behavioral control, or what they think to believe to be their actual ability to perform or engage in the said behaviors. Keep in mind, however, there are limitations to the theory. Morte, 2019, assumes the person has acquired the opportunities and resources to be successful in performing the desired behavior, regardless of the intention. Next, it does not account for other variables that factor into behavioral intention and motivation, such as fear, threat, mood, or past experience. While it does consider normative influences, it still does not take into account environmental or economic factors that may influence a person's intention to perform a behavior. Following that, it assumes that behavior is the result of a linear decision-making process and does not consider that it can change over time. While the added construct of perceived behavioral control was an important addition to the theory, it doesn't say anything about actual control over behavior. Finally, the time frame between intent and behavioral action is not addressed by the theory.
Wonderful! I hope we've all learned a valuable lesson about theory of planned behavior. Now, since you know the history, research, and even a pawsome example, go out and try it out yourself. See you around, kids!